The message today is called on Memorial Day, and I have notes here that this is one of those deals where to make sure I get it right, I'm going to have to look at my notes a whole lot. Because, you ought to be open now, okay. Most of us kind of gotten this Memorial Day attitude, and I always do, okay? Memorial Day, summer's here. Labor Day, winter's here. You know, put the toys away, it's time for doom and gloom. So it's like we look at Memorial Day and say, it's almost like the kids at party time. But that's not what Memorial Day is all about. And how many people know where Waterloo, New York is? I was going to look it up on the map, but somebody actually knows. My wife said she'd heard of it, and she's from New York. But that's actually where Memorial Day started. This fellow named General John Logan thought it would be a good idea to call attention to fallen comrades. So he designated May the 30th as a day to lay flowers on their graves, and for ones that, you know, soldiers got buried everywhere. So he said, just place a wreath. Just remember them. They're somewhere they died for the cause. Yeah. Well, actually Congress recognized that. They started Memorial Day, and it was May the 30th until 1971 when the federal workers decided that it would be better if they had a 3-day weekend, so they changed it to the last Monday of May. And that way the federal workers got a 3-day weekend. And actually, World War I started, or finished rather, and Memorial Day sort of got extended beyond the military. It got extended into the friends and family, loved ones that had died for the cause, ones that died for something. And I'll tell you, it don't matter how bad you think somebody was, they left a mark. Memorial Day is all about it. Now here's a story from, actually it came from Stories from the Heart. And I want to read this to you because I got two stories here for you. That one is, this one sets the stage just a few weeks before Christmas, 1917. And it was in Europe where the landscape was pretty black and about war. The trenches on one side held Germans, and the other side, trenches were filled with Americans. And it was World War I. The exchange of gunshots was intense. Separating them was a very narrow strip of no man's land. A young German soldier attempting to cross that no man's land had been shot, became entangled in the barbed wire. He cried out in anguish. Then in pain, he continued to whimper. Between the shells, all the Americans in that sector could hear him scream. One American soldier couldn't stand it any longer. He crawled to the German soldier. When the Americans realized what he was doing, they stopped firing, but the Germans continued. Then a German officer realized what that young American was doing, and he ordered his men to stop firing. Now there was a weird silence in that no man's land. On his stomach, the American made his way to that German soldier, disentangled him, stood up with the German in his arms, walked straight to the German trenches, and placed him in the waiting arms of his comrades. Having done so, he turned and started back to the American trenches. Suddenly, there was a hand on his shoulder that spun him around, and there stood a German officer who had won the Iron Cross, the highest German honor for bravery. He jerked it from his own uniform and placed it on the American, who walked back to the American trenches. When he was safely in the trenches, they resumed the insanity of war. That German soldier was thankful for what the American soldier's sacrifice was. I can't verify the authenticity of that story, but it certainly makes a good hero story. Let's get away from the military side or being a soldier. Here's a story about a civilian who was a hero. It comes from 1 Samuel, the 17th chapter. We got trenches. We got a group on this side called the Philistines. We got a group on this side of the valley called the Israelites, and their leader Saul. And they're over here, and here's a valley, no man's land in between. But the Philistines have got this giant, this 10-foot tall guy that's saying, "Hey, come on over, guys. Are y'all afraid of me?" Yeah, I would have been. I mean, that dude was taller than I am. Well, here comes this little civilian guy. I picture him probably about 4'10". His name was David. And here he is with the lunch pail. Dad sent him over to bring lunch to his brothers. He said, "What's going on? Why aren't y'all fighting?" "Well, there's this big giant over there. We're all scared of him." I mean, that's the way it happened. And David says, "Why? I'll take care of it." Now, can you hear the big brother? "You better go back home. What did Dad put in your lunch?" David says, "No, I got God." And said, "He delivered a lion and he delivered a bear. He helped me to slay them both." David said, "I'll take care of him." And he took the armor of God and he didn't wait. He didn't walk. The Bible says he ran out to meet the giant. And he took that slingshot and he had 5 little rocks in his pocket. He got one out and wrapped her up, wound her up, hit that old giant right between the running lights, and down he went. Now, the ironic part of that whole deal is, here's a big dragon giant. David whipped out the giant's sword and killed him with his own sword, cut his head right off. Now, he wasn't a warrior. He was a civilian. So, if we looked at Memorial Day and said he had to be a soldier, we'd have missed the things that he did. God's got an army out there too. And there's a lot of heroes. You know, you think of some of the heroes that we get big names for, like Billy Graham, or some of these big names like that. Maybe they missed Pastor Cliff. He don't have as big a church, but he's still in God's army. How about the folks that come and do? Like I said, the ones that mow the yard. How about the soldiers that get out there and tell somebody else what God did for them? They've done a job for God too to be remembered for. They've made a sacrifice. They could have been watching a ball game. There's a lot of people behind the stage that did a job. We wouldn't be where we are in this messed up world, if that's what you want to call it, if it hadn't been for the sacrifices that everybody made before us.